Joining me now is the 2022 Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational overall champion, Michael Richards. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate you having me on here. I definitely didn't expect it to be under these circumstances, but it's a real honor to talk with you. I followed your podcast and your work on Twitter for a while, and I'm happy to have a chance to talk with you.
I'm so excited to talk to you. You are fresh off your victory, right? I mean, it hasn't even been 24 hours since you won the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational overall. How are you feeling right now?
Honestly, it still really hasn't sunk in. I'm not the type of person who likes to promote myself. I guess it's hard for me to do that. So like, I haven't even announced it on Twitter that it happened, because it's like I just kind of, other people are talking about it. But overall, I feel amazing. I mean, this has been such a roller coaster ride of joy and stress combined, and I'm happy it's over. I'm obviously ecstatic with the result. I couldn't have asked for anything more, really.
And I mean, you led for a long time, but it wasn't a foregone conclusion that you were going to win. It was coming down to the wire. You only beat Jeff Zimmerman by, 15 and a half points in the overall, 4,166 and a half to 4,149. Like, that's how close it was. And it really just came down to the last few games that were finishing up before Jeff was finally throwing the towel. And Aaron Savale win for your win. I don't know if anybody else can ever say that Aaron Savale got you an overall title.
It's amazing, because he was someone that I liked 2 years ago, and then it's just kind of all been downhill since then. And I've been chasing wins for about 6 weeks now, because it was a category that I thought I could make up the most points. And a $1 stream, I had $3 the last week. He was one of my $1 pickups, and I had one win in my first 8 starts. I had 9 starts the last 3 days, had one win in the first 8. Savali sealed the deal for me. It's amazing.
Well, let's rewind a little bit. I want to talk about kind of what was your strategy coming into the draft. Draft day is what everybody looks forward to, right? It's when writers and podcasters, we get the most listens, we get the most views on our articles. It's where we get the most engagement. People care about the draft the most. It's a slow draft, right? For those who don't know, TGFBI, 15 teams, slow draft, 4 hours per pick. It could take a little while. What was your strategy coming in at pick 7?
Well, I mean, right off the bat, I was like everyone else. I'll go back a little bit. I finished about 150th last year in TGFBI, my first time doing it. So I learned a lot from that experience. Middle of the pack. I saw what people were doing that won, and so I spent a lot of time. I'm usually a prospect guy. I kind of put that stuff aside. Spend a lot of time studying how people draft and the successful players. So my strategy really was mostly the same as a lot of people. I wanted to start with a power speed guy. I was hoping to get Ronald Acuna. I thought that people were sleeping on him, undervaluing him, giving him an injury hit or whatever. So they turned out to be right, but that was the plan originally. I ended up going with Vlad Jr., which is pretty controversial because it wasn't on my plans originally, but I just kind of built the team from there. Basically, I can't really say that my strategy was perfect. I just did the things that I've struggled with in the past. Like, I used to dismiss catchers all the time. I was one of those guys who I'll find my catcher in the last round, I'll stream them or whatever, and it'll work. And this year I was the guy who got Varsho in the 6th round. I backed it up with Wilson Contreras in the 8th. And I just basically built my team around my own weaknesses. And I still didn't do what I wanted to do. I probably got 75-80% of the way there, because really what I was doing is I re-taught myself how to play fantasy, because coming into this, my home league winning strategy didn't work against all you guys. So I had to learn how to play it again and do it like you guys. So essentially I got 80% of the way there, copying what the great players do, and just built the rest of it through Fab and everything, and just grinding constantly. It was very hard.
Did you started off Guerrero, Machado, great pick, obviously. Guerrero, he gave you enough of what you wanted from him to be, worthy of that first round pick. Trevor Story in the third round, pretty much a complete bust for you. Was it your intention coming in to go hitter, 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 or did that just the way the draft fell?
Honestly, like I mentioned earlier, I was so locked in on Acuna. He got sniped at pick 6 right before me. So like my whole thing got thrown out the window. I wish I had picked Corbin Burns there, but I basically just went. I just decided at that point I was really high on Dylan Cease this year, so I just decided, okay, I know that I need to get a good closer early, so that's when I got Clase, I think in the 4th, and then I went with Cease as my ace. Basically, I really wish I had picked Burns in the 1st and Cease as my number 2. That was kind of what I wanted to do. The Acuna pick threw me off, and Story was a disappointment, like you said. He had a worse average than I was hoping for. He had less home runs and steals than I was hoping for. But that's the sort of things that give me hope for the future as well. Even though I did win this league, if I could replace these bad picks or these questionable picks with more solid ones that everyone kind of agrees is a good pick, it just feels like I have a chance to do well again.
Absolutely. Look, I think often people think that in order to win a league like this, you got to just crush the draft. Like you just have to have the most amazing draft. And one of the crazy parts about your win is I don't know that you did. I mean, you obviously have some great picks in there, right? But at the same time, like I said, your third round pick is Trevor Story. Your 7th round pick is Trevor Rogers, who murdered me in one of my main events. Your 9th round pick was Franmil Reyes. Your 11th round pick was Luis Urias, Benintendi in 13th, Jonathan Scope in the 14th, Jesus Sanchez in the 16th. You have a lot of guys that disappointed you in the top half of your draft. How did you overcome that? Because, you definitely have some great picks in the end, right? 22nd round, Tony Gonsolin was huge for you. A 28th round, Christian Walker was huge for you. Like those guys didn't overcome what missed in the, in the first half of the draft. So what did you do in season that was so successful that propelled you to the top?
That's a great question. The first thing that I solved, my first issue I needed to solve to compete at this level was volume. So last year I would have been picking a lot more upside, a lot more flashy guys. So I was able to kind of hang even with some questionable picks, just having guys who were playing. I'd have offensive players playing most of the time. I was up near the top in at bats all season. And basically, I lost my train of thought there. Can you repeat the question?
Look, how did you overcome you made mistakes or got guys that busted. Like, how do you mean? Usually we don't see guys who win overalls with those with a Trevor Rogers and a 5 ERA, and guys like Trevor Story who barely play, 70 games or whatever he played this year.
I guess, like I was saying, it's focusing on volume to get a foundation to start. And then I guess the only way I can explain it from there is just my fab. I had some bad pickups. Is it like I bid 170 plus on Esteury Ruiz when he came up chasing steals, and that flamed out for me. But I also hit on Josh Naylor, who I kept all year, Vaughn Grissom. I won George Kirby. I was very selective with my pitchers. I didn't want to stream a lot, but I did a good job when I did pick up a free agent pitcher of getting a good start and stuff like that. And just really stayed on top of who were the hot pickups each week, just trying to supplement. Because, you can get guys off the free agents who are 80, 90% of what you were hoping the busted draft pick is if you just time it right. So, I was able to pick up random guys. Elvis Andrus late in the year, he was basically Trevor's Story, or what I was hoping Trevor's Story would be during that time period. And I'm not really looking at my roster at the moment, but there's just a lot of, I basically ended up with half my team that I started with, and then the other half was just selectively aggressive on fab, trying to get guys who I thought were going to be big time performers, would keep the job more than 1 week. I wasn't really trying to play the stream game because I felt like my draft was secured the volume that I needed. So I didn't need to be chasing 3 games when another guy had 2 and stuff like that. So it was really just trying to play active guys as often as possible who were near the top of the lineup, playing for good teams if I could. And I didn't do all this stuff. I messed up on a lot of these things. And it's part of the reason I'm a little surprised I ended up pulling it out. Because like you said, there were some questionable picks in there. I mean, you named some picks that I want to take back badly right there.
Well, I mean, here's where it comes from, right? So looking at your team statistics for you got 152 innings from Carlos Carrasco. Spencer Strider, you got 131 amazing innings from him. Brady Singer, 153 amazing innings from him. George Kirby was great for you for 130 innings. John Gray, 100. Like, these are all guys you picked up off the waiver wire to supplement those pitching mistakes. Like, those are huge for you.
Yeah, and that was part of my strategy. I didn't mention that earlier, but I knew that I wanted to come out of the draft with a really strong, deep offense with depth at every position, because I knew there would be injuries. I knew there would be just underperformance. And so that was part of my success too. I was able to slowly over time cut those Jonathan Scopes and different guys who were just struggling, replace them with a productive player. And it's just like I always just had a productive team going. And I was able to bench pitchers in bad matchups and things like that. Just really playing every day like a daily league, really trying to as much as I can, even though I can only set lineups twice a week.
At what point did you start focusing more on the overall than maybe your league, or maybe you didn't? But I mean, you won your league by almost 40 points, right? 143 and a half points. Extremely impressive when you can only get 150 points max in the league. To get 143 is huge. So at what point did you start looking at just the overall, and how did you approach that?
I would say probably around June, I made a big jump. I had a big week, and I was competitive. I was near the top of my league. Maybe I was even in first place at that moment. But the week I had propelled me way up in the overall. And then that's when I said, okay, this is kind of what I was planning. Like, I envisioned this happening the way my team was structured. If I could get these things to occur, this propel up the standings would occur. And once it did, I started looking specifically at steals and wins for the overall, because I was really strong in the other 8 categories. Like, I'd got my ratios down and I'd got all the counting stats down. So it was just steals and wins, which I could have solved in the draft by making a few different other picks, but that's what I was just focusing on. And so I picked up guys like Bubba Thompson to get me steals. I tried to get Jake McCarthy. I lost him on a tie. I was just really focusing in on those. Harrison Bader was another guy I picked up. Andrus, like I mentioned. So there was just chasing quality starts with wins and chasing steals. And I knew the way my whole team was set up, if I could just be above average in steals and just stay competitive and not let people pass me, my team was set up to really run away with this thing if I could have stacked up some wins at the end. Like, I had a 200-point lead. I was up near 4,300 points, and it just kept coming down. I was getting 2 wins out of 11 starts for the last month. But if I would have gotten 5 or 4, even just whatever was happening the rest of the season, I would have kept that big lead. So I feel fortunate to hold on, because my team, I lost Gonsolin, I lost Strider. You know, like these are key. Vaughn Grisham lost his job. Like, these are all big moments, big things for me at the time. You know, especially having someone like Jeff Zimmerman and Vlad Zedler and Dylan White chasing me. These guys are monsters.
Yeah. I mean, that's a scary group behind you trying to come up and take it. Like, how nerve-wracking was the last day? Like, you told me off air you weren't even watching the games, but you had to be like on your phone or on your computer, just like watching every time like a stat went through.
No, that's how nervous I was. I couldn't even do that. I went out and played basketball. I didn't bring my phone. I just was shooting hoops, thinking about all the mistakes I made this year that got me in this position, and just hoping, basically praying. I was just like, I hope I can hold on. If I don't, it was a great season, but it was the most stressful time probably of my life, honestly, the last 6 weeks, because this means so much to me. You know, like, I came into this as a prospect guy, and I didn't do well last year. I have high expectations for myself. I'm a competitive person like everyone else, and so this was really about proving this to myself, what I could do, and I surpassed my own expectations. You know, I would have been thrilled with like a top 25 finish in this thing. So I'm just ecstatic. I'm not like a really guy who's going to be jumping around, smiling, doing that sort of stuff, but it's still a lot to take in, because it's been, we've all been through a lot in the last few years, myself included. And this has been a haven to stay away from all that negativity. So this just means more to me than just winning a regular fantasy league. And I also kind of feel bad too, because like I've mentioned, I do prospect stuff. I put that stuff aside. I gained a lot of followers on Twitter through that, and I kind of felt like I was letting people down, not covering that stuff as much. But this is just so important to me. I got to go for this, and I can apologize afterwards, type of thing.
We sometimes have to prioritize what's most important in the moment. And congratulations to you, because it's your hard work paid off. I think often, and I've made jokes in the past about prospect guys and stuff, but some of the best players in our industry, James Anderson, being first and foremost on my mind about a prospect guy who's just an amazing overall fantasy player. He's I haven't done the historical standings update yet after, since the season just ended, but coming into this year, he was the number 2 ranked player in the historical standings. Like, it just tells you, like, I think if you are so used to looking at so many prospects, it probably makes it easier to hone in on just 30, regular 26-man rosters.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just the deep knowledge of the rosters, when players come up, guys like James, he already has a very deep understanding of what these players are and how they could fit into the fantasy. So he just has that constant edge. For him, and for prospect people like myself, it's just the strategy of playing fantasy. Like it's a different thing. Like if I try to win playing with prospects, you guys are going to crush me. Mm-hmm. So I need to, and I had to put my ego aside. Like I tried to do it last year. I was like, oh, I'm going to get all these hot guys. Joe Adell's going to come up, and I'm going to get. It wasn't the way. It wasn't the way. So I said, what did all the guys do that beat me? And they weren't looking at those players. They were.
I think that one of the things that prospect guys end up, doing is fading prospects. Mm-hmm. Because they cover prospects for so long and so hard, they know how many of them fail. Like, most prospects aren't going to, become like stars in MLB. Some of them are going to become role players, and some of them are going to flame out. And I think because prospect guys cover that stuff so in depth, they kind of know, hey, maybe I don't, I'll take my gambles here and there. You took a gamble on Andrew Vaughn, and I think that one paid off pretty well. But like, you didn't load your team with a bunch of prospect guys. You loaded your team with, like you said, reliable at bats and reliable innings. And it showed, because that's one of the reasons why you won.
Absolutely. And I didn't mention that earlier, but avoiding prospects during the draft was number 1 on my list of that. I had to do that. I had to remove them from the player pool in my mind in order to do the draft the way I wanted to. So I didn't even think about Bobby Witt. Julio Rodriguez was out there in the 200s during my draft. I didn't even touch him. I wish I had, but it's like, it would have screwed up what I was trying to do. So it's like, because I know myself, I would have been like, oh, once I open that up, it's just like, oh, here's the next upside guy. Here's the next upside guy. And that's what the rest of my draft becomes.
And I think every year I do this episode of the podcast where I sit down with the overall winner. I have the same conversation, and because I remind people that everybody who, or not everybody, but a lot of people who play in overall contests think the way to win an overall contest is to put all these high risk, high upside guys together. And if they all hit, you're going to win overall. But year after year after year, and TGFBI now 5 years in, has shown that the people who win the main event overall or the TGFBI overall typically have super boring teams that just produce. Like, they just day in and day out, your guys are getting 4 or 5 plate appearances, and you just rack up enough stats. Obviously you need some guys to jump up for you. Those pitchers I named that you picked up off the wire, plus Tony Gonsolin, added on to Dylan Cease and Luis Garcia. Obviously, like, those are like huge, reasons why you won, but it's, you didn't take the high variance route, and it paid off huge.
Absolutely. And that was that was part of my plan. I mean, I've been listening to podcasts and all you great players for months before we started drafting, and this is what you guys were saying. And I was looking back at the results, and it was like I just witnessed it. I'm used to winning. Like when I came into this, I used to crush all my home leagues. So it's like, whoa, this is a different experience. What I used to do doesn't work anymore. Like I literally have to learn how to play this game over again, and that's what I did. And that's what I learned, is to avoid the upside. I mean, not completely, but it shouldn't be a major part of your plan, to especially your draft plan. You can go after those guys in fab strategically, ideally not the high price ones that everyone are talking about at the moment, but there's a way to make prospects work for you. You know, I got Vaughn Grissom for $27 in fab. Like he was one of the best players at second base in that month or 6 weeks that he was going. So there's obviously got to be luck involved in all this stuff. But, you know, the reason I got Vaughn Grissom is because of my prospect stuff. You know, I'd been following him all year. I'd followed him last year. I knew, you know, so like eventually these prospects do become the major league players that we're all looking at and playing. And so that's how I think James and other players are able to do so well. Once they put their ego aside, and it's not about finding players that are going to break out at every point. It's about putting together a team with the right mix of veterans, because you need these veterans. Like you said, the boring players. That's what I tried to do. I tried to pick a boring team that would beat people with volume.
There you go. It worked out perfectly. How do you follow this up? How do you defend your title in 2023? Because now, I mean, I think prior to yesterday and prior to like the last few months, like you were kind of a little bit of an unknown. People didn't really know that you'd be the guy competing, but now you are going to be on everybody's bulletin board as the target. Like if I'm throwing darts, it's at Michael. It's not a Jeff Zimmerman. It's not former champ Tanner Bale or Todd Zoller or Kevin Hastings or Clay Link. It's now at Michael. So like, how do you repeat this?
Well, it's going to be very difficult. I've listened to champions from other sports in the past talk about repeating being harder than winning it the first time. And I think that's because everyone's going to have that target on me. I'm not going to surprise anyone. But at the same time, this is an individual game. I'm only going to be playing against 14 other people in my league. And like I've said earlier in this, I gain the confidence because I know I'm going to try hard. I know it's going to be important to me. So that's not going to be an issue. I get my confidence from all those bad picks that you mentioned, all the things that I did wrong. I made mistakes in fab I haven't mentioned too. Like, so really, like I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. I feel like I feel like I can skillfully replace those picks with the correct pick more often than not, which sounds crazy, but it's like that was my first attempt at trying to do that. So I've done it in the past in other situations. So I feel like I'm going to be better next year. Whether or not that leads to another overall, who knows? But I'm gonna be trying hard, and I like when people are aware of me. I like when people are coming after me. You know, I also like playing the person who's in the shadows, chasing everyone. But this is exciting for me. I'm looking forward to repeating next year, or trying to.
Well, I wish you all the luck. I'm coming for you. I know everybody else will be coming for you. Let's talk a little bit about your dynasty stuff. Where do you work? What do you focus on? You know, plug everything you kind of got going on, because like obviously people should be following you. If you're not following Michael on Twitter, follow him at MP Richards 1981 on the Twitter machine. Definitely go follow him, right? Because like clearly best player in the industry right now as far as TGFBI is concerned.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I took a little break here down the stretch just because I needed to focus on this win. There was too much stuff coming at me. So, but I plan on continuing my writing at Fantrax. I cover Dynasty and prospects over there. I may be open to moving more into the major league side as well, especially after this season. But be on the lookout for that. I also do a podcast each week called The Call Up, presented by Triple Play with my co-host David Mendelson. And we have a lot of fun talking about the prospects that are on the verge of getting called up and just players producing in the lower levels. And we usually have a knowledgeable guest that we bring on each week. And that's actually been a big help for me staying grounded during all of this as well. So those are the two main things I do, as well as Twitter, as you said, MP Richards 1981. And I've been a little focused on other things the last few months, but I plan on getting back into that more coming up and being a source to help people out in the off season.
Definitely go and follow Michael. Listen to the pod, follow the work, follow him on Twitter, and learn from him. I'm going to be learning from you, Michael. It has been an absolute pleasure get to sit down and talk to you and kind of learn a little bit about what happened in your process. And I look forward to taking you down next year.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you having me on. Like I said, it's a big honor to talk with you. I've been following you since I came into this, and I really appreciate this opportunity.
Of course. Thank you.